Welcome everybody to Raw, which is a new video series that I've got coming out, and the reason that's inspired me to do this is because obviously I feel the transformation in myself for the past few years has been ongoing, and it's been instrumental in where I am today. So this is the first series, and this is one of the first guys that we're going to speak to, which is Mitch Behan. Mitch is a mentor of mine, and he's come on board in the first 3 years. 3 years ago when I did all the seminars that Mitch does, and then obviously we've kept in touch and we've had a communication since. On all things going forward, success and development. So, Mitch, welcome to the show.
It's great to be part of this. Thank you for inviting me along. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. And I will say that was my first ever introduction, so I'm glad to get that out of the road. So, Mitch, obviously, MJB Seminars.
Yep.
I remember about 3 years ago, it was February 24 now, of 2016.
Yep.
When I finally, actually the video just came across me when I was at a stage in my life where I was actually doing a bit of soul searching.
Right.
And there was a couple of questions going on in my life, and I needed answers. And a lot of that actually was, I was starting to see, patterns going on for me, and I started to realise that, I was really good at stuff that I set my mind to.
Right.
But I found it really hard to get to the number one, but exactly where I wanted to be, I found it really hard to get there. Now, I remember in Gaelic football, I'd gotten to maybe 3 Kildare county finals with certain teams, whether that be club team with House or school team with Kilcullen, and we were always beaten in the finals. And I remember it took me 10 years to win an All-Ireland boxing championship. Now, I was like 11 and 12 and I could beat All-Ireland champions in tournaments, but it just wasn't happening on the day. Something was going on. And then after my fight in Germany, and I seen the way things roll out again, and I was wondering what was going on. It might be also interesting to mention that in around 2008, I started to use the law of attraction. I started to read up about those things, and I started to look at it. And I remember Conor McGregor back then was also a sponsored athlete of a sports nutrition shop that my brother opened called Big Shots Nutrition down in Portlaoise.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, my brother said, Dennis, you got to listen to this guy. He speaks a lot of mindset stuff like you, like
right.
law of attraction, this, that, and the other. And myself and Conor were friends on Facebook, and then lots of stuff he was writing up about law of attraction, one-on-one, and he'd post about it. And then he just went quiet out of nowhere, and then maybe a year or so ago, and next thing all of a sudden he just burst onto the scenes in the UFC, and he just was absolutely killing it. But his language had changed from the Facebook pages, and he started to talk about balance and emotion and all of this, and I started to go, what are these extra things that he's talking about now? That because I was really chasing every avenue I could to try and get my mind right, because obviously I had a big goal about being world champion or getting as far as I possibly could. And then all of a sudden asking those questions, and then all of a sudden I see you guys like a post on Facebook, and it was you talking about bridging the gap.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So obviously I looked at that. I took the coaching call, and I've never looked back.
Yeah. Well, I think that, there's a couple of significant things there. I think that the beauty about the movie, The Secret, and the book, The Secret, was that it brought to the general public the fact that we are governed by laws. So the law of attraction, it's a law. And the problem with The Secret was that it was very one-sided. It only showed one side. And the going quiet, I think, of Conor was probably when he realised that The Secret is only divulging a lopsided view of what attraction actually is. Because fundamentally, you can't have an attraction without a repulsion. And so both things happen simultaneously. And in actual fact, for us to progress and get to where we want to get to, we can only do that in a state of what's called equanimity or balance. So what I mean by that is this. If a person comes along and they set a goal for themselves, and that goal is in the future, because they have 2 parts of themselves, they will publicly set a goal. Hey, I want to get to this place. I want to win this championship. I want to win this score. And in setting that goal in the future, and they're announcing it publicly, they attach to that a plus to that public announcement and to that goal. But the minute you do that, you simultaneously, and to exactly the same degree, create the opposite privately. So you'll have a private part of yourself will turn up and start to ridicule you because you're not actually there. Make sense?
Yeah.
So this is what happens when a person does this. They're creating a vision for their lives, and the problem with The Secret was that it did that. It got people to create a plus in their lives, not realizing that there's a simultaneous minus. Now the reason that that part of you turns up to balance out your plus, so when you're publicly plus, you'll be privately minus. The reason that part of you turns up and subconsciously ridicules you, and how it ridicules you is that you wake up the next morning and you're not where you want to be. So when you're not where you want to be, you start to subconsciously beat yourself up because you're not the champion. You haven't made it. You haven't got the score. You haven't won the belt. You have whatever that is. You're not there. So this is the problem with putting that sort of information out there, is that it gets people to have a false view of how we create a reality. But in actual fact, the key to creating a reality is to go from having a vision to becoming a visionary. Now, the fundamental difference between a vision and a visionary is that a person that is a visionary, they know to create the outcome that they want, and then from that outcome, they must build their lives backwards. So they got to reverse engineer how they're going to get there. It's a bit like you gone into a fight. You reverse engineer the outcome. You know, I said it to you a long time ago. You got to turn up before you arrive, and you got to wait there until you turn up. But the only way to do that is that if you reverse engineer how you're going to achieve that goal or that vision in your life, meaning if you work it backwards to the point of, you know, that tomorrow morning when you get out of bed, you know that whether you get out of the left side of the bed or the right side of the bed, everything is part of the vision. Every move you make from that point on is part of the vision. This is what eradicates conflict inside of a human being's mind, because when people set a goal for their lives and they don't know how to get there, it creates conflict, so they create turmoil. But a visionary has a clear understanding of the road to get there. And I think that was one of the fundamental things that happened with Conor. It's also one of the fundamental things that's happened with you. When you go into a fight, you know you have a game plan. You know what you eat, you know when you pee, you know what you drink. You guys are meticulous with this stuff, like meticulous. That's the difference between a vision and a visionary. As I said, the problem with The Secret at that time was it was promoting lopsidedness. But now we're well beyond that. And you would have seen Conor, you know, in his interviews, the interview that he did, which is a really quite an amazing interview, where he had won the 2 belts. He had held both titles. And one of the interviews, that's right. Yeah. In the interview, one of the guys says to him, "Hey Conor, you must feel really good." And he went, "I do feel really good, but this feeling is familiar to me. I've been here many times before." So when you set a goal in your life, the last thing to experience the outcome of that goal is your outer world, is your sensory world. And then when it happens, it's familiar to you because you've been there so many times. You've been there so many times, over and over and over again. So many times that the last thing to show up and show you that you've made it is your outer world, not your inner world.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, and I actually have felt myself as well. It's like, I remember watching X Factor when they've won it, and they're going, "Oh my God, I can't believe I never thought I could do this." And I'm thinking secretly in my mind, I'm like, "Yes, you did, because you've attracted it.
Oh yeah,
because you bring about what you feel about."
Yeah.
And that was one of the great things as well. There's so many things I wanted to say along that also. But getting to that was the law of attraction. I used to use my mind in that, and then obviously. Actually bringing up The Secret, I did also follow that, and when things were going really good, I thought I'm following it great, and then all of a sudden all the negative stuff is going on, and I think now I'm destroying all the good work I did in Law of Attraction. That was something that you did. Now eventually over 2 years I was getting the ups and downs. I didn't understand why I was getting what would be perceived as negatives, positives, until I learned with you guys, especially in the second seminar, about it's not really ups and downs, challenge reward, isn't it? And if you've got it's like you said, when you've got the vision of being the champion and being that person you want to be with everything else included, you got to have challenge and reward to guide you to get that. I mean, I've been I've been seen many times speaking, and I have no problem saying that, you know, I was drinking too much, I was well overweight, I wasn't comfortable in my own skin, and I was standing in a house in Fortitude Valley in 2011, and I looked at myself and I said, I am going to be the world champion. I started to say, I am the world champion. Now, if I'd have stepped in the ring that day against the world champion, I'd have been destroyed. But what it did was it set about in motion that feeling that I started to envision about who I am as the world champion. Started to, not only did I start to change my nutrition, I just kept on this. I would get into this. First and foremost, the nutrition, and then that started to make me feel good. And then I was like, what else can I do? I can look at more supplements. What else can I do? Now I can train harder, and it's always these little levels I felt like I was gaining all the way to getting to where I am. But so that was the balance with obviously with The Secret. Which is very careful, because I know that some people have committed suicide in that because they didn't really know how to balance out the perception.
Right.
Well, with that especially that thing with balance that we're talking about, when McGregor was sitting there, I have a distinct memory of him sitting there. Now, he was unbelievable, of, you know, as selling tickets and businessman and all of that. He was sitting there and he was combing his beard. Now, I doubt that was something he was doing around his living room, so he was just doing really well at selling tickets and doing everything else. But he said, I'm emotionless and all. And back then I didn't understand why that was so important. I didn't understand. And these were the questions I was asking. And then obviously going into relationships and you was obviously, that was obviously just mind-blowing. And like you said yourself, from what goes on there in that, it's something that you never really, it's like your first time losing your virginity in a sense. There's just something about it.
It's incredible.
A first time driving a car, or it's just there. But that obviously ticked the boxes for what I wanted to know about the patterns that I was doing, but why was I creating those patterns? And so, you know, without talking too much about that, it set right how I wanted to feel about myself, and the stuff that was going on for me in my subconscious, and those feelings that were always niggling away. I will just say right now that when I went back, and like you said, when I went back after we did that process, and I sat there in the chair, I went back up, and I sat there for the first time in my life, I realised how full of like just bad feelings, like nervousness, just, you know, what's that? Just
Anxiety.
That's what I was actually full of, and I didn't actually know until I did that, and we balanced out all those perceptions. My whole life just came together in a flash. I seen it for what it was, and then I sat there for the first time in my life, and I just was clear. My whole body, everything was gone, and I was like, wow.
Well, you see, those moments many years ago used to be some sort of mystical experience. People used to think this is a mystical experience if you go and hang out in a mountain with a monk for 7 years and meditate for 10 hours a day. But now what we know is what you're doing there is you're collapsing a wave function of consciousness inside of your brain. So we know now that we can sever old neural pathways from the past and rewire the brain. And when you rewire the brain, when the brain creates a congruency between the brain and the heart, there's a fundamental transformation that occurs inside of a human being. Once that fundamental transformation occurs, you can't undo it. I can't take away from you. Consciousness is an evolutionary process. I'm not becoming a gorilla. We are evolving, and once you evolve the immortal nature of the brain, and once you shift it, it can't be undone. So that's what happens in that moment. And it's important for people to understand that to master your destiny, you cannot do it if you're a victim of your history. So the key to mastering your destiny is you have to be able to sort out what happened in your history. So your history and everything that occurred in your life is specifically designed in order for you to fulfill your dreams. But if you're caught up in the lopsided view of what happened back there, no matter what that is, you can't get ahead. So you have to understand that a great way of looking at this is that the things that happened in your life that you think were in the way, you know, are not, you know, people say, oh, what happened, it was in the way. No, it's on the way. No. What happened for you in your life is the way. And the key is that you must go through that stuff. And people go, yeah, you know, my dad abandoned me, so I'm going to punch it out, or I'm going to be an excellent sports star. No, they're not the ones that become excellent sports stars. The ones that become excellent sports stars are the ones that are able to look back and go, I'd never change anything.
Yeah.
You give me a magic wand, I'd gladly go have my child go through what I went through. Because I just get, and I'm so humbled that every single act and every single move that occurred back there has created the extraordinary human being that I actually am. And the thing is that human beings are extraordinary. When they stop and look, they are extraordinary. And when you stop and watch your life come together like that, in that moment that you did with us, when you see that happen, you are a completely different human being, and no one can take that off you.
Yeah.
But the key to mastering your destiny is held in your history, and how it is you're holding your history. And you cannot create a new destiny if you're governed or mastered by the past history. You just can't do it. So you've got to learn to handle what you've got.
You've got. Yeah, I mean, you certainly do, and like obviously, and so it's just so with that, obviously, it can't go back, because once I seen life from that perspective, as a whole, and everything it's like everything just melted in at once, and everything all made sense, and those little petty stories that, you know, I wasn't walking around conscious of them, because I had made a conscious decision that I was going to be world champion, and I was kind of good at seeing the benefit in some things. Like when I done my neck, I was able to look back and say, yes, I missed out in nearly a year's worth of my boxing, but there was some good benefits to not boxing for those. And so I was getting smart consciously, but subconsciously, some of the stuff that I was looking back on in my mind was also giving me anxiety. And so when we were able to do that in that moment, now not only do I feel better naturally, now also I'm able to, you know, obviously I'm free or everything, but the fact that I'm able to feel on a subconscious level I'm feeling better, all of a sudden things in my life just started to blossom around me even better.
Well, you see, there's a couple of things there. The first thing is that in that moment, your certainty becomes greater than your doubt, right? So when your certainty becomes greater than your doubt, you're learning to handle more. The other fundamental thing is when we look at our past, you see, it doesn't matter what you say to yourself in your conscious mind. The processor that is your conscious mind, the processor that is your subconscious mind, is about 4 million times stronger than the processor that is your conscious mind. So you think about that. You think about, there's people out there like, oh, you know, I'm going to be a millionaire, or I'm going to be a rock star, or I'm going to be a pilot, or I'm going to be a hero. And whatever it is, whatever this dream is that they're saying consciously, and you know, they get to their deathbed and they're delusional, because they have an affirmation without any commitment to that. And an affirmation without commitment creates delusion. And then that creates stress and torment, and you end up not following your dreams. You just have to go to a graveyard. Walk over a graveyard. There's billions of dollars of dreams and aspirations buried there. So, but it's what goes on in the subconscious mind that is creating the reality. That's what you're saying to me. You know, I wasn't conscious of it. But there was something going on. And, you know, consciously I'm like, no, I'm going to win. No, it doesn't matter what goes on in your conscious mind. Your subconscious mind it holds the steering wheel of the bus, baby, and that's the way it is. So your subconscious mind, now the reason I can prove to you that it's the stronger processor is because you're not sitting here making your heart beat. You're not sitting here filtering your blood. You're not doing that. Your subconscious mind is doing that. And your subconscious mind forms its beliefs between the third trimester and the time the child is 8 years old. So between the third trimester and the time the child is 8 years old, that's when 85% of your neural pathways in your brain and your cycles are created. And if your subconscious motive is, I was abandoned, I was neglected, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not intelligent enough, if that's what's going on in your subconscious mind, it doesn't matter what you have going on in your conscious mind, it's your subconscious mind that's running the show. So what we did with you was we got you to look at what was going on in your subconscious mind. And we got you to collapse that concept, sever the neural pathways in your brain, reorganize them. And when that happened, your heart opened and you're suddenly like, oh my God, and then you just get it. Now, at that point, your certainty becomes greater than your doubt. The person who has the most amount of certainty about the reality is the one that brings it to fruition.
Yeah.
The person who hasn't is the one that doesn't do anything. They're just like the rest of the sheeple. They have all this everybody's getting around, consciously saying this is what I'm going to do, but subconsciously it doesn't matter what they're saying. Subconsciously, if you don't feel you're enough, you're toast. Forget about it.
Well, I mean, so first it's good to know that that I did that on the February of 2016.
Yeah.
When I lost that fight in 2015.
That's right.
And from that point onwards, anyone can see the improvements that I just made in those 2 years has just been incredible.
Yeah. But you have to understand, you're a great example of a true champion. You know what I mean? You did the work. Does that make sense? You sat down and you're a great example of a human being that gets that. You've got to do the work. Yeah. You've got to put your time in. But you didn't just put your time into building your life. You put your time and your work in here. This is where you do your work. We got to do our work out here, but you got to do your work in here, and that's what you did. And you did, because people will do their work. They do everything except the right fucking thing. But the thing is, you got to do the right thing, not everything. There's lots of mumbo jumbo crap out there. Yeah. We sat you down and said, okay, here's how it works. This is what you got to do. This is the results that we get, and you'll see the results as you go through. And you're a great example of someone that grabbed it by the horns and went, let's go.
Well, it's incredible because I remember I have this vision as a kid around the side of my house, and I remember thinking all sorts of stuff, and I remember thinking what. And I knew I was young, and I knew I was thinking crazy things, and I was like, just questioning everything. And I know you were the same about certain things as well. You can speak about that. But just, I remember being in school as well one day, and I'm just like, I was sitting there, I could barely get my work done. I'm being given homework. I can't even catch up with what's going on. Yeah. I remember my first spelling test, I didn't even have a notebook. And I'm thinking, I just was always asking more questions of what was going on. So after relationships in youth, that made a big one. But after letting it go, that was for me. And again, obviously, the next one again, STP, was another level again. But I don't think we can really even go into explaining that one. That one for me was like peeking through the membrane of life and just getting a glimpse of what's going on. Yeah. And then kind of coming back and then trying to implement that. Yeah. And it's funny because a woman that had done that with you guys only a year ago, I was just speaking to her Friday, asking how you going on, because you can't just say, how'd you go after SDP? Yeah. You have to give someone a year or something and say, how is everything going that you're implementing? Yeah. So, but I will go back to letting it go. And I remember I was catching up with some sponsors over in Perth after letting it go. And I had been doing some public speaking, and I'd always speak to some of the sales reps and that, and they'd always come up and ask me questions after I'd speak or whatever. But after letting it go, my understanding of the duality was just incredible. My understanding of the goals, the way we crave goals with voids and values, and obviously I don't want to go too much into it because it's the seminar itself it's a beautiful journey to go through. Yeah. So I don't want to talk too much about it and go, but just the understanding that it gave me has just hold true. And I always still like to get around and look at other books and read everything and just nothing that I've seen, and this isn't I don't have an agenda with saying any of this, and because you're sitting here, because I'm going to make another 20 with other influential people within my life as well. I've no reason to say this except it just brought everything together. And something funny I thought in the car driving over here was just thinking of a couple of points that I might bring up. And after I did those and obviously started you mentoring me and that, I remember sometimes some of my conversations started to feel electric in my body. And I remember one day I was talking to my mum on the phone, and I was getting real hyped up, and my mum actually said to me, she said, Dennis, what's going on with you? Like, I've never heard you ever speak like that ever before. And it was because I was finally able to make sense of what was going on. And I mean, I do believe that there's a lot more, and I'm not saying anything else. All I'm saying is, and I'm bringing it back to when I was a boy, all the questions I used to ask and everything, and now it all makes sense from where I am today. And I am going to be world champion, and I won that fight in Mexico, and it didn't show up for a reason, but again, I know it's for a bigger reason.
That's right.
and so it's all come together. And a little bit of a laugh that I had was one day my mum, she would always ask me some stuff, and I just keep. And then she turned around and she just like, you've an answer for everything, and walked off. And I thought that was a good thing. Well, for me, it was a good thing for me because, and you know, she said it jokingly, but for me, I was like, because before I never had any answers. So the fact that I can at least try and give some sort of a symbol to what's going on in my life and be happy about it and still be motivated to go do what I do, rather than get down in the dumps about the negatives and the challenges that happen. I'm able to just keep pushing forward with that dream and that vision.
Well, I think, you know, what's important to understand, the only time we get any more in our lives is when we truly learn to handle what we've been given. And I think that learning to handle what you've got is key to getting anywhere. And I've kind of said the same thing but backwards. But getting back to when you were young, when we turn up here, we all have an innate knowing that there's something much greater going on. And then we're introduced to these parents and into this system. And when we look at this system, we watch this system as a child, we question it. You know, we're like, what is this all about? I mean, I don't get what's going on here. I don't get this religion thing. Like, I just didn't get it. I was like, well, I don't get this religion thing, you know? And I think that it's important for us to ask questions. It's, you know, you got a little girl growing up, and I got 3 little kids, and it's important for them to ask questions. And the thing that I do is I never try to answer my kids' questions. I always give them an answer that gets them to look for themselves and ask a bigger question. I don't try to impose any religion, any belief, anything on top of them. I sit under the stars with them regularly. I talk to them about life and the universe. And I think the beauty about today is that we're at a point in an emergence in time where we're coming out and we're realizing that we're capable of thinking greater than we've been told to think. And someone came along for all of us and drew a line in the sand and said, this is this and that is that. And we swallowed it. The truth is that this is not this, and that certainly is not that. And you have to ask the bigger questions that make you question life and reality and how this thing actually works. And at the fundamental depths of life, this whole universe is specifically designed in order for all of us to fulfill our dreams and aspirations. And the degree to which we suffer is proportionate to our ignorance of exactly that point. And if you understand life and you start to ask the bigger questions about how life actually works, how does life actually work? What are the laws? We're governed by laws. What are the laws? How does conservation work? How does transformation work? How do these things work? And when we ask these things, we get it. We start to delve into bigger answers. We turn from pessimism to optimism, and when we turn from pessimism, the fucking problem with pessimists is that they're always fucking right, because every time you fail, you're right. So it just becomes this vicious cycle of, hey, I failed, I'm a fucking pessimist, so I'm fucking right. So this just keeps happening for people. The beauty about an optimist is that they're open to seeing that there's a solution in what they see is the problem. And when you see that there's a solution, what you see is the problem, and perhaps the problem is the system we've all been indoctrinated into. When we stop and question that, and we start to look at who we are, why we're here, and we start to take ourselves seriously, and we start to build our self-esteem, and we start to fall for ourselves and believe in who we are, the world plays the game. So when you don't have those things, the world you perceive plays against you, and the world sends you tests. Like you have somebody who clearly cheated. They clearly cheated in a boxing match. It's bullshit. But you know, and I know, that your certainty is greater than that. It would be very easy to fall into that hole. No way. No. The vision is greater than that. Does that make sense? Yeah. And when you have a vision greater than the pettiness of your reality or what you perceive to be your past, you're rewarded and you're given more. So that's what optimism is. Be optimistic about your future. Understand that everything that happens to you has an order to it, and that order is designed to get you to fulfill your dreams.
Well, that's exactly it. And one of the things we came across was in one of the seminars was I learned my why. Yeah. And it was a really cool technique that you got, and so I have no problem saying that my why is to be the greatest and best version of myself and inspire others to do the same. Yeah. And so moving forward with that, that's one of the reasons why I was starting to make videos. Yeah. Because not only am I, as everyone can see, fulfilling being the greatest and best version of myself, because I'm going like, you know, laser focus on improving my life, getting to where I want to be, with a beautiful family, and just creating my sphere of influence, just with the, you know, with the way I want it and the way it works out. And so and then making the videos then is to maybe inspire, you know, people to do the same. But when we talk about the certainty, like, I was 27-1 against that Mexican fella, and it had been said in tongue in cheek, and actually as a compliment, but it'd been clickbait on an article that deluded Dennis, I was called. And people would have thought it was deluded, but again, my certainty outweighed Munguia's doubt that I could outpoint him.
Yeah.
Did my certainty outweigh that I would get the decision? Obviously not, but I had a lot of go forward with that. That might be a little bit conflicting, but I knew I could outpoint him I mean, I knew that without any, you know, more than anybody else's there, and I did, because I surely did outpoint him.
Yeah, totally.
And again, and the reason why, and that's another thing about certainty that's got me to where I am, because I just know I've got my goals, or my mission statement. And after that happened, I mean, you know, I'm on camera saying there's no point in getting down, there's no point in getting depressed about it. And you know, there's a couple of reasons for that, but one of them is that when I read my mission statement, nothing has changed. If anything, what's just happened and how I composed and showed how I didn't get emotional, and how certain I was of my dreams were going to happen anyway, was just how I reacted after the fight.
Yeah.
Yes, it is bad for boxing, and everything else that I spoke about, but in the next video, I just said there's no point in getting down about it, because my goals are still intact.
Yeah.
And my why, to be the best and great version, to be the best version of myself, and inspire others to do the same, and that actually fits in. It actually fits in even better with my mission statement.
Yeah.
So this is something that I'm glad that I'm very conscious of.
Yeah.
Because the next time that I get up there, I know for a fact, you know, not only do I, you know, before I believed I could do it and I had that certainty, now I know it. Like, now it's just in me, and so I've gained so much more confidence from that, and that it's just really kicked on and going forward. But also, just touch on that emotion as well. So, I mean, to be able to relinquish emotion, I'll tell you the benefits for me in being able to relinquish emotion. Like, it's when you, so if something happens, obviously you get emotional.
Yeah.
That emotion that's obviously triggered inside your body, that's a trigger that happens without your own conscious mind.
Yeah.
And then that obviously then sets the path for how else you're going to react and what else is going to happen. You know, and I think it's the Dalai Lama that said, you know, it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to that that determines the outcome.
Yeah.
And so I've got myself to a place, and again, thanks to the work I've done with you, I've got myself to the place where I can get myself emotionless, and that's what McGregor was talking about.
Yeah.
Releasing that emotion. Now, inspiration, gratitude, and love are the three most things that I do. But there's no real balance. There's no duality to that in terms of, again, if you try to be positive plus, you will see the negative.
Yeah.
So I just believe that that's what McGregor was talking about then, and that's what I've taken on too.
Yeah. I think that there's a never ever. I don't think anybody should ever mix motivation with inspiration. Motivation is trying to get yourself to do things you don't actually want to do. When you're inspired, so the clarity of a human being's vision for their lives determines the vitality of their life. So people who are inspired and have a clear vision are more vitalized, energized. So the clarity of your vision determines the vitality of your reality and the vitality of your life. And when the clearer the vision, the clearer a human being the clearer the vision a human being has for their lives, the more people want to participate and get involved and get behind you. And so what you saw happening for Conor is not that he became emotionless, he just slipped into a state of equanimity. And in a state of equanimity, you're inspired. So emotion is distortion.
Yeah.
It's push-pull. You know, it's poison. Well, when you're inspired, you're poised. Yeah. You're not poisoned by emotion, you're poised and you're ready to strike.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about you, and that's the thing about Conor. And I think that both of your behaviours are very similar. You know, Conor has made his way through. You will become, for a World Boxing Organisation, the Conor McGregor of the World Boxing Organisation. I'm saying it now and watch it happen.
Yeah.
And because you got what it's about. You got that getting emotional doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And emotions, you have to understand it. There's this whole thing goes around, especially at the moment, about people talking about triggers. Now you have to get what a trigger is. A trigger, when a person gets emotional or pissed off or angry, whatever it is, the reason they're emotional is because they're emotional. Because there's another part of them which is higher inside of them, called their higher self, that knows better than to be getting emotional. But in the emotional state, you haven't got the lesson. You haven't learned anything. You're emotional because you're emotional. People get pissed off because they're pissed off. They're not pissed off because of what happened to them. They're pissed off because they know that there's something else going on that they haven't seen.
Yeah.
So what we taught you was, when this occurs, how to immediately sort it out, how to stop and see what it is it's actually trying to teach you. So if we understand this within the sports world, right, there are so many athletes out there. There are so many extraordinary sports people that have this distorted sensory input from their past, which creates a distorted motoring output. So now they're motivated. And if they just clear up what they perceive occurred back there, they go from motivation to inspiration, because your certainty at that point becomes greater than your doubt, and your doubt has been running you. When your certainty becomes greater than your doubt, you feel this divine calling. You feel called. And I'm always saying that life doesn't call the qualified, it qualifies the called.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you went from trying to qualify to going to realizing that you had a calling, and in that calling, you know, and your calling is you know, you're clear that you want to be the greatest version of yourself, but also to encourage other kids, because you and I come from the bad end of town.
Yeah.
You know, I come from the bad end of Dublin, where it was like fucking living in Iraq. It was full on, and we come from that, and we've made sense of what happened there, and we've become inspired by it and wanted to help other human beings. I come from, I was a drug addict, I was a drug dealer, I was in prison, I had crazy shit happening in my life. Like, by the time I was 26, my life was done, my life was out of control. But somebody sat my ass down one day and you know, held my hand. You know, when I was a rough and tough guy, held my hand and looked at me and said to me, "Man, you're a master creator. Look how much devastation you've created in your life." I was like, shit. And they go, "You have to see, Mitch, that you can create anything you want. You can create anything. If you can make this much of a mess of your life, can you imagine what you're capable of doing?" I'm like, shit. Then she said to me, "If you're not creating your life, you're creating your death. So what are you going to do?" It was one of the biggest questions I ever had posed to me.
Yeah.
Because in that moment I realized, if I stay on this path, I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
Because when she asked me that question, I realized in that moment, if I stay on this path, I'm going to destroy my life. I'm probably going to end up killing myself. So she said to me, if you can create this much of a mess, you can create anything you want. So why don't we just take your energy and we put it into you fulfilling your dreams? Why don't we clear up the past mystery and clear up the past history and get you into the mystery and create a vision for your life of what you want to do? And what if everything that happened to you was there to enable you and inspire you to become an extraordinary human being? I was like, nobody had ever said that to me, but she called me on my shit.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with all of us. Every sports star that is out there at the moment, the ones that have the capacity to be a champion, like to really, really nail it, it's very sad to see them fall because of stuff they haven't worked out. But if you stop and take the time to work stuff out, and it doesn't take much time, you saw it took me 20 minutes with you.
Yeah.
20 minutes, and you were completely clear. Your whole neural pathways, you were looking at me. I remember the scenario. You were hyperventilating. You were like, fuck, man. that just blew my mind. You are a completely different human being that got up off that chair.
I can't stress it enough.
It's unquestionable. But this is the thing, that people need to know that that's not a mystical place anymore. That's an actual moment that's awaiting you.
Yeah.
If you just get that, you just have to stop and look.
Yeah.
Transformation of your reality happens on the inside, not the outside.
It is definitely, without a doubt, the most profound thing that ever happened to me, and people will know, that I've been around the blocks as well. As a teenager, 21, and this crazy stuff happened, and whether that be bad or good, profound is profound.
Yeah.
And that was by far the most profound thing, and I'm yet, if there's anything more profound than that, I want it.
Yeah.
Or I'm scared of it. One or the other.
Yeah.
Because but again, so just talk about maybe growing up in Dublin. I remember we actually were over in Bali, and you told me a funny story. Growing up in Ireland was good. Was really good crack, as we'll say. But the fun, the crack with the boys was really good.
Yeah.
When you look back, they're fond memories.
Oh, for sure. Look, I mean, people, over here in Australia, you move on average, the average family will move 7 times. In Ireland, you don't move, So I grew up with these gang of kids, and we were, we weren't bad kids, we weren't by no stretch of the imagination were we bad kids, but we all loved each other and we all had each other's backs, and each kid came from a different background, and so I know that we were, but we were young lads, and I remember I was drinking at 10. I smoked my first joint when I was 12. Because because there was nothing to do. There was nothing. It was either that or you were out robbing cars and stuff like that. And I just was never into that. That just wasn't my thing. But there was a lot of that went on. But for me, it was that was our escape, and that was where we had fun, and that was what we did. Not realizing that our brains are developing at that point in time, and it's not good to be doing that sort of stuff at that age. It's really not. But I have fond memories back there. I was very, very blessed. I have amazing parents. My dad's the second eldest of 25 kids. My mum is the second eldest of 4 kids. And they were beautiful people. And Irish people are people all around the world are beautiful. I've been fortunate. I haven't been back in Ireland since '96. Simply because I believe that there's so much to see in the world, but I feel that I feel very privileged that I came from Dublin. I feel very privileged that I got the parents that I got, and I feel very privileged that I got to hang out with the people that I got to hang out with, because I had some amazing experiences back there.
Well, again, it's just like we said. It's just like we said, that everything in the past was for a reason to get us to where we are,
Totally.
It's funny because I still speak to all the guys that I grew up with, and I used to go into an estate where the boys lived, and I used to live out the country. I used to cycle in, and I'll tell you, I was just the cheekiest little fucker, and they call me the blow-in,
right.
And they'd all group, because they're always in their groups, even though we're all good friends, and I'm related to most of the estate anyway, but I used to be, I like just always be giving cheek, and all the guys would jump me, and it was actually fun. We enjoyed it, but there was a craziness about it, which I really liked, and that craziness is still with me today. That little bit of just always just trying to push the boundaries just to see how far I can, in a good way.
Yeah.
But it was just like, but the slagging that went on was unnatural. The slagging, the beating each other up, but we'd be full on thumping each other and laughing at the same time. There was a craziness to it, but it obviously was meant for me, because that's my line of work.
I mean, one of the things that we used to love as kids was I used to love getting chased. I just love getting chased. So we'd go and rob orchards. So we'd jump people's walls, and then we'd be stuck up the tree. And one of the lads would peg an apple at the back door, and the neighbour would come out, or the person would come out, and they'd be chasing you up the garden. And we'd get to the back wall. We'd be trying to climb over the wall, laughing our heads off, and you'd pull your mate off the wall so he'd get caught, and then you'd get over the wall, and then 2 minutes later you'd see your mate getting thrown over the wall by the neighbour, and then he'd be this is just what we did. But there wasn't a lot to do. Like, we didn't have community centres or anything like that back there. You were given a football, and then you were out in the street, and that was it. But I'd be out in the street till 10 o'clock at night.
Because you could do that back then.
And I learned from the streets. I was, and as you did, we were streetwise kids. I didn't learn. I was not academic at all. I really didn't learn. I didn't find academia until probably 21, 22 years old when I started to study deeply metaphysics and quantum physics and neuroplasticity and that sort of stuff, which I have a keen interest in. But up until then, like, I never read my first book until I was 14. 14 years old. I never read my first book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're the same as me, but you were 21. I was the first bit of academic stuff. Would you call MJB stuff academic? I don't know.
I think
it's the first time I was inspired to sit there. I had no concentration levels in school. I could not do it. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I'm inspired about something, I'm learning about life, and I'm glued. And for the first time in my life, stuff is actually going in, and I'm listening, and I don't even have to try and focus.
Yeah.
And that's the first time in my life that stuff has happened.
I think one of our visions when we put this together was we wanted to make it understandable and relatable to everybody.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to make it laborious. So you'll see that in the events we have a lot of fun. So we run amok. You know, like I swear a lot because it's who I am. But our objective is to make it understandable and relatable. So we play a lot of games with people. We don't just give people theory without then practically getting them to implement it. And then I tell a lot of stories about my life and some of the things that went on. And then that allows me to prove the point of what I'm saying about life and how life actually works. Yeah. But our objective was to make this information accessible to the masses because the masses have a right to know. It should not just be for the select. The masses have a right to know who they are, what goes on in reality, what they're capable of doing, and that they are limitless. Every human being is limitless, and that there's some keys to actually getting and achieving what you want. And if you're going to teach that sort of stuff, you have to make it relatable. Like I've just come out of an event today, you know, we're up there ramming the information home, and when you're in the event, like it's very high energy. You know, like I don't hold back. I want people to know this is how it is because you know I want people to see that you know perhaps you know they missed stuff but they don't have to. So our objective is to make it understandable, relatable, fun. And not blow people's heads, you know, like not just blow their heads off. You have to be careful. Like relationships in you to letting it go. Relationships in you gives you the introduction, gives you the experience. Letting it go is a different animal altogether. Letting it go is now we dive down the rabbit hole, and then STP is where we put a backpack on and we launch down the rabbit hole and we get right into it. But we make it easy, understandable, relatable, so it just makes sense and it's inspiring.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, and it's good too because I've had a challenging day at STP2, which brought me the most growth, the most uncomfortable that I can ever be, whether that be in training or in life. You always brings me the most growth, which again is duality.
Yeah.
And why am I feeling like this around this subject? You know.
Yeah.
And it started to make me look at myself, and then when I was able to balance those perceptions, then I was able to see what was going on, and then I was able to notice it, and more as time went on, that same thing never bothered me anymore, or I was at least able to balance the why it did if it ever came up, and so.
Well, comfort and growth cannot occupy the same space. So it takes discomfort to actually grow.
Yeah.
You know, we require challenges in our lives to actually grow. The problem is that the masses don't pick up the reins of their challenges. So therefore they attract petty challenges.
Yeah.
So like when you have a vision to get to where you want to get to, if you get a speeding fine, like I get speeding fines, I don't even see them. Does that make sense? Because I don't get caught up in that petty bullshit because my focus is over here. That's where I'm going, and it doesn't matter. Yeah. That's where I'm going. Yeah. And so I don't have time for that petty bullshit. Yeah. So when a human being picks up the reins of their life and points it in the direction that they want, they don't attract. You know, it just doesn't turn up.
Well, it's definitely something that I want to say about masterminding money. My very first one. You know, and I actually did a video after. I felt so inspired. I did a video after it and saying about how good it was, and obviously giving you guys a shout out. Sure. But I had no idea what that event, which was only a 2-day event, was going to do. I mean, I went from at that point really having no real kind of value on money, just knowing money only ever occupied my mind when I didn't have it. Yeah. Other than that, I was just whatever. You know, someday I'll have a lot of money, someday I'll start saving, whatever. After I left that, and I was probably about 15 grand in credit card debt, trying to make stuff happen and everything else. And I mean, even within 1 year, not only was all my debts paid off, but my savings, my level of income and then go another year to go to now has just been phenomenal. And another thing I wanted to hit on was when we spoke about a second ago, we were saying about being head focused and not worrying about the petty things. When you came on board with me as a mentor, I remember that even though I was on track, I was kind of, but lots of petty things were taking up my time. And I remember you saying to me one day before I made one of the biggest decisions of my life, you went, Dennis, the level of conversation, the level of problems here, do you want to have little petty levels of problems, or do you want to have big ones? If we're going to have big ones, we need to chase this and we need to do it now. And that put me onto the best decision I'd ever made in my whole life.
Yeah.
And so it is true that you will constantly keep picking up petty lessons, petty situations and problems until you just go forward with what it is, get with your vision, do the things you have to. And I remember you saying before as well, I said, Dennis, I'm going to have to kick your ass sometimes. And I thought, there's nothing I won't do, and do it straight away. And yes, some of the most challenging things I've ever had to do is stuff that you've said, but stuff that I would never, because it wasn't in my even my sphere of influence to even go and just be thinking that way and do those things.
Yeah.
But I could never have gotten away from the mindset that I was at unless I did those things. And I remember sometimes, I'd have called you or whatever, and I'd begin to call back, and I'd nearly be anxious because I'd hear, oh, okay, geez, now we're going to do this. And it's like, it really is the right stuff to do, but there's something inside us playing safe all our lives that we just want to play safe and do the right thing and have no conflict.
Yeah.
But that was getting me absolutely nowhere. And
Yeah.
so when I finally did just break through, now I'm at that stage where something needs to be done, I can just do it.
Yeah.
You know me now.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I'm thinking, as you're saying it, I'm thinking, right, what way do I attack that?
Yeah.
Rather than, but this, but what, or why, but, the way I used to be.
Yeah, I think that I think that life is trying to nurse us all the time. So it sends us challenges, and the key when challenges turn up is that normally when they turn up, you think they're out of, they're not your challenges. So you get shit turning up, and it's like, this is a challenge, and the objective is to actually, you're always going to have challenges. You're always going to have challenges. The key is to lean into your challenges. And as you lean into the challenges from the beginning, as you lean in, suddenly those challenges go away. And now you're left with a void, and the void becomes, okay, now that that's going away, I'm going to pick up the challenge of actually pointing my life in the direction that I want. So there's a couple of key things to understand here. The reason you're attracting challenges in your life, no matter who you are, that you perceive are not yours, is because life is trying to nudge you. It's trying to nudge you back on track. It's trying to make you see that you have everything inside of you to handle your life. It's trying to enable you and equip you, and this is what I was saying earlier, and I never cleaned it up about triggers. When triggers turn up or challenges turn up, triggers and challenges turn up to tell you something specific about yourself. It's not life trying to give you a hard time. Why would it do that? Why would life try to give you a hard time? What sort of malicious thing do you think this life is, this universe is? Life is actually trying to enable you and empower you to step up. It's trying to get you to understand who you are, determine your self-worth. Because when you step up, you start to harness characteristics and traits inside of yourself that you never knew you had. And as you harness these traits and characteristics inside of yourself that you never knew you had, you suddenly start to fall in love with yourself, and you start to have a deep appreciation of who you are. Now, money flows and vitality flows to where there's the greatest amount of appreciation, and it flees from where there's not. So as you build deep appreciation of yourself, you start to build a deep appreciation of the challenges that occurred in your life, because you start to realize that life was nursing you the whole time. It was never giving you a hard time. Yeah. It was nursing you the whole time to get back on track with your vision and what it is you're here to do. If you're here to do something, no matter what anybody tells you, you're here to do something. Like I say to the guys all the time, a funny way to look at it is that, most kids start masturbating at 12. And they will masturbate on average 3 times a week. They release X amount of sperms every time they masturbate. And the average person is having a child now at the age of 35. Now, if we calculate the amount of sperms 3 times a week over that time period, every human being that's alive right now has a 1 in 97 trillion chance of actually being here. So that says that you're pretty important, and there is no mistake in your ass being in this world. So you have something very important here to do, and that perhaps life is trying to nudge you to actually do what it is you're actually here to do. And so the quicker you lean into your challenges and you start to pick up the reins of your life, the quicker now you start to, because once you get past the petty challenges, you've enabled yourself to be able to deal with them. But now take what you've enabled and learn to deal with, and pick up the reins of your life and go, right, where am I going? And as you point yourself in that direction, you stop attracting petty bullshit. And now the level of challenge just becomes greater, but it has a greater reward.
Yeah, that's it. And my level of conversations and progress in my life have just obviously you know where we're at now. We're talking about deals for big promoters and co-promotion deals and stuff like that. So it really is incredible.
Which was all part of the plan.
Which was all, yeah, that was it. I mean, the vision was clear from the start, and it just all had to play out, and I had to step up and be that person. But you know, what we spoke about, you know, the chances of being here and everything else, and I think, and this might be a little bit off subject, but you know, the whole thing about, as well as that, about being clear, and you know, I believe trust your instinct, your heart. And I think, I don't know if a lot of people are doing that or not. Lots of people are doing what they think they're supposed to do in terms of stuff. But I must stress that one of the most interesting things I ever found out about biology is that the heart is pumping before the brain is even starting to grow.
Yeah.
And so that's beaten by itself before the brain even starts to grow. So then that would lead you to think, well, that's the first thing that starts to happen, starts to pump blood, and then that starts to go. So then obviously the heart has an intelligence of its own.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I've you know, in the last while I've really started to narrow in on my intuition and feelings on stuff. And like it's incredible how far that can bring you and what that can do. But not only that, it sends you towards, I believe, it sends you towards your goals. It sends you towards your dreams, your aspirations, and what you love. So I just wanted to stress that as well. If there was anything you wanted to say on that just, you know, your heart is your most important, I believe.
Yeah. Well, we have 100 billion neural pathways in our brain, and we now know that the heart actually has the same neural pathways as the brain has. So we now know that the heart itself is a brain. And so the important thing to understand here, especially in terms of what we're talking about here, is that the heart is not just an inanimate object. It's not just a muscle. You know, it's not just a piece of flesh. The heart plays a very important role in who we are. And, you know, there's nothing like... we're now at a point in evolution that it's idiotic to think that listening to your heart is not an important thing. But like it's foolish. Because your heart plays a very important role. And so, but to listen to your heart, you have to be able to get when your heart is actually talking.
Yeah.
You have to be able to know, okay, what am I doing here? How do I listen to my heart? And you know, a really important way to do that is when it goes to making major decisions, is to actually put your hand, you know, in the chest cavity and ask yourself, okay, I want to show me what I need to do here, and your heart will tell you, and you'll feel it. Now, the first time around, it may feel a bit silly, but by the time you get to the 20th or 30th time that you're doing that, you'll never not do that again. You'll stop and go, okay, what do I need to do going out here? Feel in your heart what you need to do, and your heart will give you the answers every single time. It already knows. And the thing about it is, our body lives in the past, so but our heart actually lives in the future. Now, your mind is capable of living in the future. I can get you to visualize the future. So I can tell you, tell me what side of the bed you're going to get out of bed tomorrow morning. You'll visualize yourself getting out of the bed. And I can say to you, okay, tell me what happened last week. So your body your mind is able to time travel. But your heart has an innate capacity to live in the future. If I got to prick your finger with a tack, what will immediately happen is neurologically, in the heart and in the brain, we feel the pain before the metal hits the skin. So the heart lives in the future. It already knows the future answers. Makes sense? Which is a really cool thing to understand. When you understand neurologically the ramifications of what we're saying there, it's a different ballgame. So you have this part of you that is very strong that you should be listening to and paying close attention to what's going on. And if you think that superstars, that sports stars, that business owners, that business leaders, entrepreneurs don't do it, you're delusional.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, that's also something that I, from the very small bit of Tony Robbins I have seen, he mentioned something about that as well. And but it's just something that I've really tuned into, and I just find when you're clear and you know what you really want, you can go do it. It tends to work out.
Yeah.
You know, it sends you on the right track. Is there anything else?
Look, I think that it's important to say that if anybody's learned anything from this, I think this is a magic thing that you're doing. I think that this is really important, because this is not just about sports stars, it's about reaching people.
Yeah. And
I think that if this has reached you in some way, then, you know, we have a capacity to like and share and comment. You know, if you ever want myself and Dennis to discuss anything in the future again, I think that's feel free to just comment, but like, share, and comment. I think is a wise thing to do.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I am looking forward. I will actually get you on again soon. There's so many more avenues we would have loved to go, but
down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Once you go down, but I mean, I am looking forward to doing it again and exploring other stuff that I wanted to chat about. But thank you very much for taking the time.
My pleasure, Dennis.
Thank you very much for all your assistance. You've been a major part in my career and my journey the last couple of years, and much appreciation. Thank you.
My pleasure.